In studio today, I have Mike Gill. Mike owns the Mortgage Specialist.
That's right.
And Mike is uncovered a lot of corruption in this state, corruption that I have been observing ever since I got to New Hampshire, actually. I started to see a little red flags start going off, but there's very little that in many cases you can do about it except to try and figure out, is this really just a local problem? Is it a small problem, or is it large? And Mike has uncovered it as very large. And we've seen evidence of the corruption and the fallout where people have lost not only large sums of money, but have even taken their lives because of it. So, Mike, welcome to We Hold These Truths.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. Now, let's back up, because I'm not sure that my audience really knows who you are, what your mission has been over the last 7 or 8 years. But what happened to you to initially start you on this track that that you started putting dots together?
Well, it's been a series of years putting dots together, or pieces to a puzzle. And quite frankly, I have the whole puzzle complete. Who knew the hardest thing wasn't to complete the puzzle, but to convince people what they're seeing? Yeah. Because that's really the most unnerving thing about this, is that how many people know and won't do anything. This really started. I had the largest brokerage firm in the United States, and based out of New Hampshire. So I did a tremendous amount of volume of business in New Hampshire. And then I kept speaking to people who started talking to me about FRM, which turned out to be an investment, real estate investment, but really was a Ponzi scheme. I approached the president of Divine Millimat, who was as connected as anybody, Alex Walker, told him what I saw. The next thing I know is I'm being audited by the IRS, the DRA. Walker turns around and tells Kakavas. I go in to see the U.S. attorney. Who is Kakavas? Is the United States attorney at the time for New Hampshire. So I'm reporting the crime to the United States Attorney's Office. How about Banking Commission Perlow, who just happens to be a insurance defender? Can you say class action lawsuit and Liberty Mutual? So if it got out that a Ponzi scheme went on and the Banking Commission was corrupt, thousands of people might just have a claim. Now, they can't have that, and that's what's going on. And the people behind the Ponzi scheme was Gene Shaheen and Bill Shaheen. This state is run by 3 law firms, McLean, Devine, and Shaheen. And you know what they all are? Insurance defenders. So they're in it for business. They're manipulating the state and the courts. The judges come from these law firms. Okay, let's back up a little bit. So FRM was, I can't remember the total, what the acronym stands for, but FRM was an investment, and I know some of the victims personally who were trying to inform me about what was going on. So FRM was this Ponzi scheme for mortgage investment, and not necessarily just investment, but it was lending money to other people so that they could build their houses and so forth. So, and those people who were the victims had actually called the Banking Commission. They called the Securities Commission. They called the Attorney General's office. And what they found out was that everybody gave FRM a clean bill of health. But now once FRM was exposed as being the Ponzi scheme that it was, and criminal action was starting to be prosecuted, these people were told, oh, guess what? We've known about complaints about them for years, and we've done nothing about it. So it's reinforcing what you're telling us, which is there's something else going on here, and that there is corruption, and the fact that the Attorney General's office was totally, quote,
unaware. I'm not sure unaware is really an accurate term, but that's what they sold the public on, is that they didn't know it.
Especially when I have their notes that they were aware. What do you think Richard Head gave to Lambert? Lambert was to go to the victims and say, listen, if I get you pennies on the dollar, you got to shut up and you can't go after Shaheen in the AG's office. And then Lambert goes to Kevin Navar and goes, let's put this bill in. Okay, so Lambert was with the instructions of the AG's office, Richard Head. And trust me, Richard Head didn't make the call. So the AG's office, at the same time, they tried a summary judgment with me to shut me up. With Richard Head again, because I went public. You see, that was the enforcer. That's the cover AG. The reason nobody did anything, it was them who was doing the stealing. You tell me what entity could be big enough to control the AG's office?
I don't know. It's puzzled me for years because I've watched the judicial system that is supposed to be representing us and is supposed to be blind justice, right? I've watched the judges manipulate the whole process. I've watched the conflict of interest. I've watched judges who should recuse themselves legitimately refuse to do so. And I've seen punishment given to one side, not to the other. I've seen, the uninformed average person who shows up in court lose their rights because they tried to do the right thing. I've seen them be arrested because they were just showing up as they were supposed to be in court, but were not represented by an attorney, so therefore they didn't know that they had a restraining order against them, so they should have checked in with the bailiff and said, I'm here because I've been ordered to be here. I'm not violating my restraining order. I'm here because I was. And then because they didn't do that, be taken over to the police department, arrested, and put in jail because they violated their restraining order. It's this kind of.
It always makes sense.
Yeah,
this
but
makes
I mean,
sense.
it's this convolution that constantly goes on that's so puzzling. And you seem to have come up.
I figured it out.
Figure it out.
Right. It's quite simple when you think about it. The AG's office is covered up. Do you know who's run the AG's office for the last 30 years? McLean. Where did AOC come from? McLean. Where did Foster come from? McLean. Where did Delaney come from? McLean. And they're all insurance defenders. Now they're covering up all the cases. That's what it is. Listen, when things don't make sense, it only means that you're looking in the wrong direction. And this is the most difficult thing. And I can see it in you. You ready? Your morals allows you to see what you believe is possible.
Right.
What I learned in 8 years of fighting was I learned to believe what they believed was possible. And then I got ahead of them. And now I'm waiting for them, and they know it. So, yes, we can do something. We can throw them in jail. The Justice Department has 22,000 downloads. Now, you tell me, if you were the Justice Department, because I've talked to them, and you're going to investigate it, what would be the first thing that happened? You'd have to get your piece of culpability out of the pie. Who is that piece? Kakavis. Who resigned about 6 weeks ago? Kakavis. See? So they know. We're playing a game where everybody knows. Now, what are they going to do about it? So what my point is, I am not going to let up. I'm going to be in front of them. I'm putting more evidence out today that's going to shock people. That Liberty Mutual quite literally had spies working in my company, protecting Shaheen from extortion. Now, I can prove that. Now, it's already out there. So what are we going to do? Like Kevin's saying, we're going to file complaints to the AGs. The hell with the AGs. They turned around, and they are the corrupt. We got to stop filing complaints back to them, to the AG's office. Consider this. What happened with the people of FRM? They know. This is so simple to prove. So simple. And that's the problem. So when I tell you the courts are corrupt, because they work for these law firms, I'm telling you police are the enforcers, because who's going to punish the police? The judges. But no, they're not. Who goes to jail in this state for corruption? There.
I haven't seen anybody go yet, so I'm not.
And do you know why they don't go? There's a reason for that. You know what the mafia, they have a code. You can't be in until you kill somebody. You know why? Right. Because they can put you in jail. It's called leverage. It's no difference here. It's leverage. Who are you going to put in jail that can't put you in jail?
Exactly.
So we have a stalemate. And here's what I want people to understand. And this is really what's at stake. Our children's future is at stake. If you give the corrupt on one side, and if we can believe that there is such a thing as corruption, do we think they're going to limit their corruption? Or do you think that if people aren't going to stand up and fight, what do the corrupt people do? They expand. Do you see the heroin problem in this country?
Oh, it's huge. And it's huge in New Hampshire. The gang problem is huge in New Hampshire. And we want to deny that we have them. You know.
How about I know how they get it in? Right. And I've gone to presidential candidates and talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
How's this? You have these racetracks that are owned by the mob. Quite literally. And what I'm saying, they just had multiple arrests a couple days ago. You know why ESPN had me on the radio? Because after all these years, everything I said is true. So now they want me on every week.
So back up a little bit, too, because I didn't know this connection, but you have discovered that horse racing was a vehicle by which corruption was entering into the states of Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire.
Throughout the country. It is owned. Penn National's owned 93% by the casinos in Vegas. They got caught wiring money to Singapore. Can you say wire fraud? Non-payment of taxes? That's exactly what's going on. Now, you know how drugs are coming into this country? I'll give you an idea. These states are giving licenses, commissions. Now, Pennsylvania, I caught them. When I said it, they arrested 7 the next day. False identifications. 80 to 90% of the people from Mexico. And what they're doing is, are the tracks filthy with drugs? Well, yes, they are. Do these people even have driver's license? Well, no, they don't. So how's it getting around? Can you say feed trucks, hay trucks, horse transportation coming from Canada or Mexico? Could it be that they're running drugs in these hay trucks and so forth? Now, I proposed this a couple months ago. And guess what happened? Isn't that right, the FBI? You arrested somebody a couple weeks ago and found out the hay truck had drugs now, didn't you? Now, how's that for networking it in?
Right.
And New Hampshire already has a problem. Who do you think's buying Rockingham Park? You're going to get another 500 to 600 people. Half of those are going to be illegal aliens. And maybe a distribution center for drugs entering into your state as it has the country.
Right, right.
Which is why they only threaten to kill me and my children. Now, what I'm saying is all through the internet. I'm not saying anything that people can't read.
That's correct. And you do put up the actual documents on your website, which is
stateofcorruption.org, which is why I'm still alive.
Right. Well, that we do know. If you want to be a whistleblower or to call attention to anything, you have to go public with your onto the airwaves somehow, because if you don't, they will find you. They silence you in some other way.
They gave me false complaints with the banking department to ruin my name and so forth. They knew it was them, but that's what they had to do. With horse racing, we cut a leg. It's insanity. Everything I'm saying has proven true, which is why ESPN has me on every week now.
So Mike Gill, who is from the Mortgage Specialists, he owns them, and he's on WSMN 1590, Nashua source for news and talk on We Hold These Truths. Now, Mike, when we're starting out, so you started hearing about FRM.
Yes.
And you started...
I went to Alex Walker with it.
You went to Alex Walker with it, okay. And then what happened after that?
Well, he says he's got a good friend, the U.S. Attorney Kakavis. And
right.
I know that because Kakavis did work for me, mortgage specialist, when the issues come down. Then I said, guess what? They were the cover team.
Okay, so that when he talked to Kakavis about Walker and Kakavis get together, then what happened?
Kakavis gave me a target letter to shut up and not to say a word. And I have the target letter if anybody would like to dispute that. So, exactly. So I knew then.
So they want you to be quiet about FRM.
And then, if I didn't, they went after my business. Then they went after me with the IRS.
Okay.
Then they went after me with the DRA. And they're doing it now. They forged my tax returns to do it. No doubt about it. We've had it authenticated. They know it. The scary thing here is to the extremes that they've gone to. And
Right.
what I would tell people is, to the level of extreme, the higher you build the wall, the more you've got to hide behind it. This is what listen, why isn't anybody suing me?
Well, this is another thing I wanted to bring up. You own the property that's just as you get on 293 going north over by the Manchester Mall.
I own Manchester. I own a property in Plastow. I own a property in Nashua.
Okay, and you have up one of these great big digital signs
all the time.
All the time, and you're constantly running this series of, well, for a while it was The Sopranos, and you were identifying local New Hampshire people as the different players in The Sopranos.
Well, it was this. It was, I compared them to, say, Bill Shaheen, Tony Soprano. And at the end, I said, one group is organized crime, and the others is The Sopranos.
Right. So, but you have not been required to take that down.
Of course not, because it's all true. Listen,
They
they're
haven't
all
sued you.
lawyers. They've been known to sue people. Now you think about that. Why haven't they sued me?
They haven't
Because
sued you.
it's
They
true.
haven't. They don't have you behind the bars. And this is not.
I tempted them to.
When did you start running that?
The last couple of years, but fighting for 7 or 8. What I did was, the first thing what we did after the FRM, then they stuck the DRA and the IRS off me, and then I started hiring attorneys. And then in front
Where
of
did you
judges.
find? Now, just back up, because so many people in this state, when they are whistleblowers, will say, or they have something that looks tainted in any way, will say, I cannot find an attorney to represent me. Where did you find attorneys?
Well, I found their attorneys. They were all spies. They sent them to me. Do you remember my controller, Lisa Tracy, who was hiring? Her husband abused their children. He got arrested for it. Shaheen became the attorney, leveraged them. She was doing the interviews and bringing me the attorneys. That's how they did it. And that should tell you the level of who these people are.
But how did you get anybody to represent you?
Here you go. You ready?
Yeah.
I don't. I have a $10 million ad out right now and on for 2 years, and I can't get an attorney for $10 million. Now, what does that tell you?
Yes.
What does every attorney know that they're not telling us? Now, here's the $64,000 question, because they're saying, because I'll ask you this question. How can all attorneys be corrupt?
Fear. Fear is really...
it is fear.
Yeah.
And here it is. You ready? The PCC. Ronna Wise ran the PCC. She's a prominent figure in this corruption. And do you know what they do? If you cross them, they take your license. So here's the 60. How do you keep all these lawyers in check? Threaten to take their license.
Well, that's come about because they very cleverly, back in, was it 1968, 1970, where they very cleverly changed the wording on an amendment to the Constitution that said that the judges would no longer, or that the courts would now be responsible for making their own rules.
Right.
But then somebody slipped in the little caveat we've been trying for many of our legislators have tried to remove this little caveat, says that the rulings of the court will have the same effect and force of law. That was sort of slipped in, and that's the part that allows the Fox to have oversight over the hen house, so to speak.
The inmates are running the prison,
exactly,
which is what I've said. And the fact that they're all lawyers, has that slipped everybody? The fact that they're pretty much out of 2 firms, did that slip by anybody? The fact that they represent these insurers such as Liberty Mutual, who pays them, does that slip by anybody? They have conflicts going in. They're doing this for business.
Right. And it goes back to the old adage of follow the dollar and find out where it is, and those who have the dollar are the ones that are pulling the strings. So and I can say I've observed some of this from, a superficial level. I haven't gone into it and investigated nearly.
The higher you go up, the more everything fits.
Right.
There's not a hair out of place.
Right.
Which is why I put that wall of corruption
with
all those names.
Now,
how can it not be connected if all of it's true?
I encourage people to, but you start on that wall of corruption. You had one at one point that was specific to New Hampshire. Can that be found anywhere?
Well, it is. It's still on stateofcorruption.org, but New Hampshire works hand in hand with Massachusetts.
Right.
You can't have one. They protect each other's. These
Right.
big insurers are mostly from Boston.
Okay. So one of the things that we do know that it wasn't until sometime in I think it was the 80s, that in order to get a license to practice law in the state of New Hampshire, you had to have gone to one of the law schools here in New Hampshire. It was a closed system, so to speak, and then they did open it up at that point. Now, if there is an attorney who is uncovering anything or is exposing anything that they don't want exposed, then that attorney will often get a PCC, a Professional Conduct Committee complaint filed against them, and then they'll have to go in front of the PCC.
But this is how it works now.
Right. This is how it works. Or the same thing is true if you're a judge and you step out of line, or there's and this is, quite honestly, this is the legitimate way for a citizen who is in the court system, who sees something going wrong. That is the avenue that is available to them to file a complaint. But what you find,
it's completely corrupt.
But what you find is that it is corrupt.
Right. The bad guys know what you do. They know where you file it. Guess who works for them? Them. You know who the first complaint I filed was? Ronnie Wise, who just ran the PCC. How's that?
Right.
Runs it. So the thing in the JCC, you know how many complaints I filed with both? McHugh, the whole thing. They had a gag order on for 5 years on my divorce. So all the information that I said that they were going through statutes could get out.
Right.
That was Judge McHugh. When I caught McHugh, put him on the tape, you know what they did? Send him out of town. These depositions I have.
Or either that or they elevate them to the Supreme Court so they can be part of it.
Exactly. You want them to shut up? You give them a job. Mm-hmm. I've been doing the depositions. The guy who was working with my DRA that I found corrupt, the lawyer, you know where he applied for a job right after I fired him? The DRA, right after he threatened Kate Casares with turning her into the FBI for a release. He applies the job to her.
Wow.
You see, you can't make that up.
Right.
But do we have the courage to do? Now, I think I have a formula. And the formula is to open up a case number, which I did with the Justice Department. I had to give them enough. Now, when they opened up a case, now we bury them with the only thing we've got left, quite literally, is numbers. We lose on every other aspect. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm collecting the numbers. We got 22,000 down loans that filled out this form. We're asking and demanding the Justice Department to investigate. We can't allow these people to investigate themselves anymore.
Right. So you're going to the Federal Department of Justice, which is just as corrupt at this point, right? Or are they?
I think that they are. Listen, I know if I can uncover all this, the Justice Department knows about it already.
Yes.
Everything that I've done and catch these guys, they were expecting me, okay? And it's still the futile. But I have found a way, and that is to use those numbers. If we can get 22,000, we can get 50,000, we can get 100,000, we can make news. People are going to turn around and say, hey, Justice Department, isn't your job to investigate? We're not actually to come here and shoot them all, not yet. But let's at least investigate them.
So you're asking for people who have been in this situation to
No, I'm asking everybody.
Right.
What did Ben Franklin said? Corruption will end when the people who are unaffected are just as outraged as the ones that are. Listen, I didn't lose a penny in FRM. I'm going to lose. They're trying to take my business. They destroyed my family. Because I wouldn't back down. That's it. Mm-hmm. So I could either sell my soul. Listen, I was already rich. It wasn't that I had to play ball with them. People said I wanted to join the club. Join the club? I was the world champion in horse racing. They weren't even in the club I was in.
Right.
But I couldn't. Listen, I grew up poor we used to look for change to buy bologna and a loaf of bread. I went to be in a seminary to be a priest for 5 years. I didn't lose who I was because I made money in business. And if the difference is between the people and money, I'll take the people. I'll take what's right. Because, I get frustrated with the citizens of this state. Like, why do I do this? But I do it for their children because they're innocent in this. What society are we leaving them? That young people who go to war, are they not heroes? Do they not risk their lives? And what do we tell them? Honor? Why isn't that we don't have any? Where's
correct.
the hypocrisy to have them risk their lives if we're not going to be heroes and brave ourselves and fight for them?
Right. My husband and I were just talking this morning about the Patriot and the fact that, as people can go and hide their heads in the sand, but eventually it does encroach upon you and it does get to you. It may be that you lose a child. It may be something different, but somehow if you ignore the corruption long enough, it eventually will come and eat you or
Winston
impact
Churchill.
you. Yeah.
Exactly. But what they're doing is it's inevitable. We're waiting and we're getting weaker.
Right.
And the thing that people are accepting the corruption. We know it's corrupt, but what are you going to do about it? Right. Especially when what are you going to do about it are the people who are.
Right.
I tell you what you can do. You cannot give up.
Right.
You can open your eyes and accept the truth. Start thinking like them. Don't be them. But if you're going to fight them, you got to know where they're going to go.
Well, this is why it's so important to go back and read your history, because if you go and you read, and the other thing is reading the books that are the other side, how the other side operates. So this is why Eisenhower and Rommel and all of these different people would read the other generals.
Right.
Because they would divulge their strategy, their thinking, and so forth. So now that you're more equipped on how to counter them. That's why Sun Tzu was so important.
Which is why I've referred to him a few times. Listen, we can lose every battle and yet win the war.
Right.
Remember Vietnam?
Right.
So it's possible.
Right.
And I'm telling you, that's how it is now. And that's why I refer to Sun Tzu.
What is it? So you're collecting cases. What kind of cases are you collecting? Simple and straightforward. What is it that if you're a listener to this program, what is it you want? What would you do?
What would I have people do?
Yeah.
I would have them fill that complaint out. I would have them share this website and this information with friends.
Which is, the website is?
stateofcorruption.org.
Okay.
Let's build an army. That's my intention. An army of victims and an army of people sick of seeing victims and don't want their children to be
So
victims.
if they've had some encounter with the Justice Department or the Banking Commission or any of the government bureaucracies, they should go to State of Corruption, and you have a form there that they can fill out. Okay.
I do. That goes straight to the Department of Justice in Washington. And TITCA, because wire
What is
fraud?
TITCA?
TITCA is the criminal division of the IRS.
Okay.
I've opened up an account there. We'll download both. We're going to show these agencies that the people of the state are sick of people not doing anything. We are going to force them, again, with our numbers.
So, for example, we had Lisa Brady on a couple of weeks ago, and Lisa has a situation where she was fired from her position and with the Department of Education, or actually with the school under the Department of Education. So that unfounded firing is a complaint that she should probably go and fill that out.
Right.
And,
she won't get
send
justice otherwise. Every agency, Department of Justice, but the DRA, Banking Commission, Health, they're all guilty. They're all run by the same. This is a money-making proposition.
How far up does it go, do you think, Mike?
Well, I've spelled it out. Ready? Ayotte ran the AG's office.
Right.
She did the covering. You know who she covered up? For Shaheen. So there's your two senators.
Right.
One's guilty of a cover-up of a Ponzi scheme. One is the owner and orchestrator with her husband of that. The governor is covering this up, Hassan, because she is a pupil or a disciple of Shaheen. Okay, now let's go to the AG's office. McLean, isn't that who I said was run? Where did AOC come from? McLean, insurance defenders, Foster's insurance defenders. Kakavas prior to that was Wiggins and Norrie. Remember John Ross and I'm suing him? Tight as a button. Nobody's out of place. They control the whole state.
So beyond the state, then we've gone to the federal government. Is how I guess I'm curious is how high up, because if they're working with Massachusetts and Pennsylvania and other states, how high up does this really go?
Right to the Justice Department, Department of Justice.
Okay.
Because U.S. attorneys are corrupt. Ortiz knows everything I'm saying for the U.S. attorney from Massachusetts. She knows. I have it on tape that I have put out there that multiple attorneys that said they were calling her and working with her, and I have it, they're saying that they reached her and stopped the investigation. Mm-hmm. No, I have that in writing. And Kakavas in New Hampshire was one of the boys. He was the guy. For instance, you asked, I've had a high executive for Liberty Mutual come to me. Turns out I'm right. And they are working for Liberty Mutual and protecting them. And you know what they don't want you to know? That this high executive, who was actually called in on a big lawsuit with the state of Montana, class action suit. He had to testify. Liberty Mutual lost. Now he has to go back to New Hampshire and run Liberty Mutual here. The only thing is now he's a witness to this crime. And they're doing the same thing in New Hampshire. So he goes to Liberty. How can I be a witness to this and testify in that class action lawsuit? Well, he knew he couldn't, so he had to quit. Do you know what Liberty Mutual's doing? I wonder how many people out there know. If you get in, because I didn't know this, if you get into an accident and it's not your fault, their insurer's responsible for paying for the repairs of your car. Well, what if you didn't know this? What if you found out that they were also responsible for any loss that you have? For instance, if your car was $40,000 and after the accident it's only worth $24,000, you're responsible. That insurance company is responsible for giving you $15,000, but you file it separately, and your broker is supposed to help you with the paperwork, and that's what gets paid first: your loss of money, then your damages. Except for they don't tell you that, and they tell the brokers not to tell you that, and they tell the repairmen not to tell you that, and then the other insurance company doesn't tell on the other one. See, now they lost that case. Now that gentleman's come forwards and told them that they're committing that same crime in the state of New Hampshire. So, well, that's just one piece of the corruption. Mm-hmm. I only had them hire as spies that I literally caught who worked for the company. Now,
you said earlier, too, that you found that there were Liberty Mutual employees that were working for you to...
Spies, absolutely. I've got their profiles. I've got their thing. They're so proud of how much money they save Liberty. At the same time, we have a case here that I'm bringing a case here, the ones that they dropped the day of. They had a Superior Court case representing Liberty Mutual in New Hampshire. I mean, and how about this? I only put everything up on the internet. So there is no confusion of their guilt and their crimes. Mm-hmm. Again, what are we going to do about it? See, that's really the question. The question isn't catching them anymore. What do you do when you catch them?
Right.
How do you catch them?
Well, now, Mike, also this raises the question to me is, okay, you have your mortgage specialist business. Has that been impacted by the actions that you've taken?
It has.
Yeah.
You know what? People are nervous in the beginning.
Right.
They're saying, who is this guy? He's a little crazy putting this stuff on the thing. I say to yourself, well, it's a guy who had enough insight to be homeless and become the largest broker in the country, world champion in horse racing. So in other words, I had that insight to do that. But it has hurt the company. And I spend my money on fighting. But I made that commitment. Listen, I'm prepared to lose everything. I'm even prepared to die, as outrageous as that might seem. But if you send soldiers overseas, there's an expectation there. I can't do what has to be done and be fearful of anything, including losing what I have.
Right. Now, you have, in essence, at some point, lost relationship with your children because of the divorce. Now,
one of my children, my daughter, I hadn't seen. She was 12 years old. My wife's a borderline personality disorder. She couldn't be left alone. Why do you think her medical records were destroyed? Why did they said they lost them in a flood? Really, a flood? You couldn't think of something else better? A flood. They said they lost her paperwork. Then we have a therapist come and speak to the children. No issues with me, but with her. Guess what? They got destroyed. But they had to work with her through the corruption of leveraging me for the 5 years and with the statutes of limitations to get through the corruption and put a gag order so I wouldn't say anything. Till finally I said, the hell with your gag order. I'm going out. In fact, you can send me to jail. I went to court with a suit on and a toothbrush in my pocket and showed the judge the toothbrush. Didn't want to put me to jail because I had it on film.
So I was just pointing out the fact that you've even risked the relationship with your family, your immediate family. Are your kids still supportive of what you're doing?
My sons are right with me.
Right.
My daughter I don't see. But this is what I say with my family. These courts tortured my family.
Right.
Tortured my children.
And you said you even had death threats against them.
Many death threats. They're on the thing. This is what I'm telling my kids, and I sat down and I told them. Your father's not that guy who talks about what he did. Your father's going to go out and do it. I'm going to show my kids who their father is, that their father was brave and honorable and saw injustice is going to stand up for it. I couldn't do more for the relationship with my children than what I'm doing right now.
That's an important thing to
it's
highlight.
All of it.
I mean, because
it's my motivation.
Your motivation is basically what our founding fathers' motivation was, which was, you've put your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor on the line. And that's something that I wanted to bring out, because why we do what we do is not because it's going to make us more affluent or higher esteem in public eye or whatever, but it's because we truly believe in the principles of this country and the freedoms that we have in this country, and we want to preserve them for the next generations and for future generations.
I agree. That's exactly my motivation. I mean, I was already wealthy. I was already powerful. I didn't need that.
Right.
Instead, I've had to risk that.
Yeah.
But you know what? I do it. I do it without question. What scares me, how many people see this and don't lift and help. That was the other thing that shocked me. I figured, when we expose all this, people will just stand up and say, hey, this is outrageous. We can't allow this to happen. But that's what I found. I felt that the condition of the situation was so much worse. We were accepting of almost anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's next? You said that you're getting ready to put some more evidence out.
You'll be seeing some more. You'll see a deposition coming out today.
Okay.
Where he tells you he's a spy. Where he turns around and says he doesn't know the insurers, and then corrects me and tells me Liberty. How's that? So you're going to see a spy in person. Now, I've already seen one just I put out last week. You're going to know they're lying.
So if people really want to start to understand and follow this, they can go to stopcorruption.
stateofcorruption.org. I have a library of where we were for a couple of years ago. You see step at a time of how we catch them.
Exactly.
You know why I documented it? You know why I went to State of Corruption? Because I don't care what happens to me at this point, but I left the history of this. This is never going to go away. More people are going to look in this and understand.
Yes.
Do you know something you were saying as far as people who know? You know who knows me? My enemies.
Yes.
You know what they said to me? They said, Mike, you're cursed by brilliant insight, condemned by moral conviction. I am telling you, it took my breath for 1 second, because I knew then they knew me better than the people I'm trying to help.
Right. Right.
Which is a hard thing to do sometimes. If you want to know how I wake up and it's time, it's how people aren't taking on to this and the fact that everything that I'm risking and it's still fear.
Right. Right. Well, when you're standing out there on the front lines, it's very lonely. And,
by yourself.
Yeah, when you're
Right.
by yourself. And so this is one of the reasons that Kevin Avard has had you on many times. You've been on Granite Grok. You've been on now ESPN.
Many times.
Many
Yeah.
times. And they've now given you a weekly program.
Every Sunday.
That's awesome.
Right.
And,
to talk about corruption in horse racing.
but just in horse racing, because we know just by looking at Larry Brady and what's going on with the football, that it's also there.
This is really horse racing. It's big business. What business is growing more than the casino business? It's going to infiltrate every state. What you're going to see is casino gambling, but it's what they do with that money. If they're bribing your politicians and they're bribing your AG's office, they can get away with murder. And what I'm saying is happening in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The mayor, for 32 years, just got taken off to jail. The AG's down there just got indicted. No, what do you think is happening?
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what. And you know what they were all doing? Penn National. It's business corruption. Just like the insurers, like Liberty Mutual, corrupting people, so is big casinos. It's big business.
I'd be curious too, because now I'm not a big fan of health insurance at this point, and I know that it's been sold to us through Obamacare and Medicaid and all of this other stuff. It's just a third party that's trying to take your money away from you and charge you more in the long run for
what? The biggest
what?
cost in insurance is corruption.
Yeah.
That's the cost.
And it's out there because I've seen it where I'm paying what if I were to go to an independent laboratory for medical tests, I could pay what my copay is with the insurance company. And meanwhile, the insurance company or the hospital or whoever it is has billed the insurance company an astronomical amount that they supposedly their share out of the insurance company comes from. So it's amazing to me that we've now bought into that, and why I keep sounding the horn that insurance companies aren't a necessity. We'd be better off if we individually saved our money, put it aside, and waited for that catastrophe to happen, and then use that money, because it would probably grow with our investments more than it does with the insurance companies.
You see those big casinos? Somebody lost money. Who's got bigger buildings and who owns more property than insurers? That should tell you if they're making money and winning the game.
Right.
And listen, for you to catch a deductible at this point, you got to get hit by a train.
Yes, exactly.
So in other words, think about the same. We've been sold out to the insurer again. Big business. That's, what you're going to see is that this is the problem. I listened to Donald Trump the other day, and people were standing up and saying, well, the VA corrupt and this is corrupt. I go, there's your answer. You want to know what's wrong with this country? Listen, the terrorists that are terrorizing us every day live in this state and run it. That's our terrorists.
Right.
And I'm not telling you these others don't exist, but we better start trusting our own and know they're trustworthy before we start making deals with other people. Exactly.
And taking care of what's at home first before you try to go out and save the world is a long adage that my dad used to say all the time. You got to get your own house in order. And then once you get your own house in order, then you can go out and work someplace else to spread the wealth, so to speak.
What used to make me, when the airplane tells you, when those oxygen masks drop, put it on you first so you can save your kids. Right. And that's the thing that I've got to be able to keep me in the game to be able to save anybody else. Right, right. So what's the one thing that you want our listeners to do that will help us to wake up to what's going on? Do they need to go do the research first, or do they need to make a complaint first? What do they need to do? Listen, I gave you the research. You see the evidence. It isn't that I don't name names. I name everybody. I tell them what they do, and I show you the evidence. This is what I only need you to do. Tell your friends, so forth. Share the information on the website, and download the complaint. Let's make that 22,000 100,000. And then turn around and say 100,000 people from this state has downloaded this complaint and is asking this Department of Justice to investigate. Now, the one thing politicians can't resist is numbers. So if we build it, they will come. How about this? I get a call from Rand Paul's people every day. Every day. And they text me, so if anybody's questioning it, I can show you that too. And I've been speaking to Trump's people. Now everybody wants to grab the ball and bring it over the line. But they just want to touch the ball on the 1-yard line.
Right.
Problem is, we still got a ways to go.
Right.
So whatever it is, I'm asking us, be prepared to do it ourselves. I've said that I was going to run for governor, not because I want to run for governor, not because I'm a politician. I'm probably the last guy you could call a politician. But I'll tell you it straight, and I know how to catch them, and I know that this state is living under a corrupt umbrella that, wouldn't you want to see what it looked like one time, honest? The people who are running the state care about the citizens, are trying to improve their lives rather than take advantage of them and trying to make money from it. I just want one time in my life just to see what it looks like.
That's an awesome statement. And it would be something that I'm sure many people would get behind, because they do.
Then all you have to do is download the form. And if you don't, then you've lost the right to complain about how corrupt it is, right, because you couldn't afford a stamp. And you know what? Between me and you can download it on your computer. You don't even need a stamp. How about you did something? Well,
now, Mike Gill, who's from Mortgage Specialists and has been uncovering the corruption that he sees in the state of New Hampshire, and it's overflowed into Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. The thing that
I will tell you this: no state is more complete of corruption than New Hampshire, and I think it has to do with the size. It took less of them to take it over.
Right. The other thing that I think that you said that I think is very important is that it is the individuals. It's we, the people, who have to have the courage to stand up and be counted. And until we do, and it doesn't have to be in huge numbers, it just has to be, we have to stand up. A certain percentage of us have to stand up in order to be strong enough to make the tide turn back in the right direction. So, Mike Gill, thank you so much for all you've done and for all you are doing and for coming on We Hold These Truths. On Thursday, we are going to have Dennis Michael Lynch on the phone. Dennis Michael Lynch has just released his third They Come to America, in which he exposes again the southern border. But you have to think about that northern border. It's twice as long as the southern border, and we have fewer people up there, and many of the terrorists come across the northern border. This is Karen Testerman with We Hold These Truths on WSMN 1590, brought to you by First Principles. We will see you on Thursday at 10 o'clock.